Hey, I'm Pastor Jonathan, and I'm one of the teaching pastors here at Lead Today. I want to do the second part of a three-part series on gaining God's vision for your situation. What I talked about last time was seeing the reality of your situation. And we're just talking about how to continue to advance no matter what happens in life, no matter what you face. How do you continue to advance? How do you keep moving forward? And so the first step was to see the reality of your situation. So today I want to talk about part two, which is how to gain God's vision for your situation. So as you're facing whatever your situation might be, whatever your reality is, as a leader, you're looking at your situation, and the first step was to see the reality of it. And so once you've seen that, once you actually see the reality of what you're facing, then you want to start to look at your situation from God's perspective. So what would God want done in that scenario? What would God want done in that situation? So we looked at some general principles, some things that we know that God always wants done. And God always wants us to, for instance, serve others. So God wants us to serve. God wants us to speak the truth, so as we look at our situation, we're looking to communicate the truth. We know that God wants us to make things better. And so we're always looking to make a better situation than the one we found. We know that God makes systems and creates systems. And so we're always looking to create systems which will help organization and help things work better. If we look to the scriptures, we can look at the story of David and Goliath. And David was a young man who was pretty small, and he faced a giant in Goliath who was a Philistine. One of the things that we see from the story is when David came to the battlefield or the battle scene, he saw what was going on. He saw the good and the bad and the ugly of the situation. But then David looked at what would God want done. And he saw a giant who was defying God's army and defying God himself. And so he said, I'm going to take that giant on. Even though I don't know what's going to happen, even though I'm smaller, even though it's difficult, I know that's what God would want done, so I'm going to do it. And so what David did was he began to talk about it, and he began to take steps towards taking on the giant. And so if we look at our own situation, we can go, okay, here's a difficult situation, here's a good situation, this is my reality. What would God want done as I look at this scenario? And then I can face it, I can develop a strategy, I can develop an approach to tackling my situation from God's perspective. Once I do that, then the next step is to implement that challenge. So I want to encourage you today to gain God's vision for your situation. Look at what you're facing, see what God would want done, then we'll move on to the next step.